Isareth the Awakener is a kind of card that when you look at it at first you go, oh, you know what? Pretty cool. All right, I get it. And then when you go back for a second look, your brain goes, wait, what the fuck? Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, and welcome to a bonus video that exists today thanks to Cinder Shadow, so send your regards his way. Also, it exists because Wizard of the Coast's out of their mind. Okay, so we're talking one card over the line. We're talking Isareth the Awakener. Let's talk the good, the bad, and the absurd. So let's start out by taking a look at the artwork on this card. All right, now I'm gonna lean in, take a nice look at it. I've got it up on my screen right now. So you've got Isareth striding forward with this big vulture kind of, just kind of framing her head. She's got this regal posture. I genuinely enjoy the fact that they don't shy away from making more female necromancers that might inhabit the same space as Liliana, because you could look at this almost as like, you could easily go, what is this, like a Liliana who's been eaten a bit, you know what I mean, like that kind of a feel to it. And behind her you've got what is either the shadow of some shambling undead or some spirits, and then you can see off far in the distance as well, there's either again some shambling dead or some spirits. It's not 100% clear in the artwork what it is, but when you read the flavor text and look it all over, either way, this artwork is fantastic. It looks like she's just striding confidently forwards. I really enjoy the concept of the name, like Isareth the Awakener. It's obviously a necromancer and you're defying the undead, but it doesn't have that kind of a connotation. It's more like, this is your awakening, welcome to your new life kind of thing. So that's a cool twist to it. In terms of flavor, I like it. And when I read through the card at first, I'm like, okay, I get it. You've got a 3/3 death touch. Whenever it attacks, you can pay X, grab a guy from your opponent's graveyard, put him in play under your control. And that's pretty cool. All right. But then when you gotta specifically read the wording of the card, because obviously it makes a difference in their particular. So we'll do that now. We'll take a look at the specific wording, and that's what you get when you go back for your second reading. Whenever Isareth the Awakener attacks, you may pay X. When you do, return target creature card with converted mana cost X from your graveyard to the battlefield with a corpse counter on it. If that creature would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. Now, there's some interesting things to note when you look at this. The first one that popped out to me was what happens right after the you may pay X. Now, the old wording of Magic cards, it would have been worded this way. Whenever Isareth or Isareth the Awakener attacks, you may pay X. If you do, return target creature card. Now this says when you do. Now I don't feel like this is actually a useful change. I don't see how this makes the card better. I think if, because it says you may, and it's an if. So it's basically like, you can choose to do this. If you choose to do this, do such and such. Now, when takes up twice as much card space, twice as much lettering, costs twice as much ink. I don't see the advantage to that. Now, obviously, that's not nearly enough to spawn a video like this. It'd be pretty ridiculous if I wanted to be like, guys, they said when instead of if. That was actually a minor thing I noticed going through it. But the major thing, honestly, is the corpse counter. Here's where it gets really weird, because it says when you return that creature card from your opponent's graveyard, you put a corpse counter on it, right? Now, if the creature leaves the battlefield, exile instead of putting it anywhere else. Now, somebody asked me about that. My first response, they were like, why would they put a counter on the card like this? And I'm like, well, mechanically it serves as a reminder for players. Additionally, though, on top of that, it would work with cards that interact with counters, you know, and then things that care about that sort of thing. Like, you could use a card to remove the counter from it. Like, let's say you get a creature from your opponent's graveyard. You can then use something to remove the counter from that creature. And then when the creature dies, it'll go back to your opponent's graveyard and you can get it back again, right? You're like, oh, keep reusing it. That was my first thought. But then when you go back and read it, it actually doesn't say that. Even if you remove the counter, if the corpse counter is removed from the creature, that creature will still be exiled when it leaves the battlefield, which is very, very confusing, honestly, considering that in the past they had made cards like Makeshift Mannequin, and Makeshift Mannequin is a black spell that returns a creature card from your opponent's graveyard. It puts a mannequin counter on it, and it says that when it has a mannequin counter on it, if it becomes the target of a spell or ability, it gets sacrificed. So it specifically ties that ability to the counter. Now, in this case, so if you remove the counter from the mannequin, like the mannequin creature, you get to keep it. You don't have a problem, and that trigger doesn't happen. But with this, even if you remove the counter, that creature still has that built-in trigger that will exile it. So this counter that's put there to help with memory issues actually doesn't really serve the purpose that it was meant to, in a way. On top of that, here's the main issue I have with it. It's meant to remind you, hey, this creature's going to get exiled. But you can only use it on your opponent's creatures. So this isn't a situation where I'm getting my own guys back and I can keep getting them back. I'm getting them from my opponent, who's most likely going to be playing with sleeves, or at the very least be playing with different creatures and cards than me. So it's going to be readily apparent this isn't mine, and all the stuff that I get from my opponent is going to be getting removed. So to me, this feels like it's very confusing. It's unnecessary, and on top of that, they're reusing a counter type they've previously used in Magic. Corpse counters already exist, albeit, yes, in a very narrow way, but they already exist, and the flavor of them contradicts this as well. Corpse counters were used on Scavenging Ghoul. For those of you who don't know, Scavenging Ghoul was printed at the beginning of Magic the Gathering, and in the 3rd edition or 4th edition, I believe it was 4th edition reprinting of it, they changed it so that before it would get counters on it, but they didn't have a specific name. So they officially made them corpse counters in 4th edition, so that a Scavenging Ghoul, whenever a creature dies at the end of the turn, the Scavenging Ghoul gets a corpse counter for each creature that died, representing each corpse that he has accumulated up. And his ability is to remove one of these corpse counters to regenerate him. So the concept, the flavor behind him, is that he eats corpses to regenerate. Now that's pretty cool. Now flash forward to today, and we've got corpse counters, which now represent that that the creature is an undead corpse that's been brought back, not an inert corpse that can be eaten by a ghoul. And again, this isn't a major sticking point for me, obviously. I mean, this card was printed 2.5 decades ago. How many of you even know about it, right? But the point remains that they've used this counter again. It means something different now. If you happen to actually have, like, you get a Scavenging Ghoul from your opponent, I can take your Scavenging Ghoul from your graveyard. It gets a corpse counter on it. I can then remove the corpse counter from itself to regenerate itself, but that corpse counter there was to represent that it's a corpse that's been brought back by Isareth. So you have this sort of like, they're contradicting the old flavor. When it comes to counters, they need to be used across the board. That's why they started, like, artifacts just started using charge counters and things like that. So there will be a consistency. Consistency is important. It shows that they're putting in the effort. So these corpse counters, on top of that, I have another issue with these. These corpse counters are supposed to represent, hey, we've got the undead body here. Well, if these are spirits in the artwork, then it doesn't make sense to use a corpse counter. And if these are corpses in the artwork, first of all, it's not represented effectively enough for me in the artwork. But secondly, it doesn't make any sense why they would be exiled afterwards. If I stab somebody's guy over there, like I stab one of your warrior dudes, and then I reanimate him, and then he dies again, he's still just a corpse I can reanimate. So the flavor behind the corpse counters doesn't even make sense. They're put there as a reminder, but the bigger reminder is the fact that it's your opponent's creatures. The functionality of the ability isn't tied to the token like it has been in Magic's past. The token is a token type that's been used before, but now represents something different. So overall, the flavor on this is muddy, and the longer I looked at it, the more it hurt my brain, honestly. So I mean, it feels like, look, this is the beginner set, guys. And the reason they did this is it's a beginner concept. Look, you're coming into Magic. We want to make it easier for you. But this does not feel like the way to do it. Making something that feels like it should be functionally tied to it, and if you get rid of it, it doesn't actually make that difference, and they still have to remember it. It's like, this counter is here so you remember this guy goes. But if the counter goes away, you still have to remember. Well, then why are you using the counters in the first place? It doesn't make sense to me. It falls apart. So the card itself, the concept of a necromancer chick like this, 3 mana for a 3/3 death touch that reanimates your opponent's creatures, seems really solid. Seems like it's going to be an excellent brawl commander. But the text box is where it gets ugly and clunky, and it seems just lazy. I really, really don't like it, guys. So let me know what you think about this card and the whole thing. I mean, to me, this is ridiculous. So I will take a look at what you guys have to say. We'll see you probably later on tonight for a live stream. So click that subscribe button. Make sure you got the bell rung. and leave some pleasant comments for Papa Purple! Whoa! No. Bye-bye.
And together, we are the sixth color of magic. Woohoo!